Matcha, the world's new obsession. A rich blend of caffeine and umami tones blended into velvety jade goodness. But did you know that matcha isn't actually new? Today, at Whole Process, we're uncovering the earthy mystery behind this refreshing drink. If you enjoy these journeys, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future uploads. So, how is this luminous green powder brought to life, and most importantly, where did it all begin? This fine jade-colored powder traces its roots back hundreds of years to the Chinese dynasty. The Tang dynasty monks used to steam and compress tea into bricks. Then, these tea bricks were crushed into powder form and mixed with salt and water to create the predecessor to our modern-day matcha. It was believed that tea was the main factor in their excessive meditative and energizing effects. In the late 1100s, a Zen Buddhist monk named Eisai returned to Japan from China carrying something small but immensely transformative, a handful of tea seeds. Something so small began the long-standing legacy of matcha. At the time, the production of matcha was highly limited in Japan, which led to matcha being regarded as a luxury product of sorts. But matcha didn't stay the same. In Japan, monks experimented and developed a new growing method, marking the beginning of matcha's diverse history in Japan. The real start began when matcha was decidedly set as central to the Japanese tea ceremony, also known as chanoyu. This grassy-tasting leaf was considered the pinnacle of simplicity, a drink now associated with a global wellness culture. In fact, it's mainly used as a flavor today in lattes and desserts, a link as vivid as the 800-year history itself, with ancient monks whisking tea for meditation, and today, baristas foaming up matcha in coffee shops, a drink that truly stood the test of time. But what really separates matcha from your regular tea? The word matcha simply means powdered leaves in Japanese. In Japanese, matcha, mocha, quite literally just translates to powdered tea, with mo, meaning ground or powdered, and cha meaning tea. So while it's mainly associated with green tea, the term technically refers to any finely ground, powdered tea, at least in the literal sense. So unlike refreshments like Earl Grey tea, where leaves are steeped rather than grinded, in matcha, the leaves themselves are consumed, owing to its rich and complex flavor. But the origin of matcha is quite different to what you'd expect. It grows from the same plant that creates the green, black, and oolong teas, but only the leaves grown and processed in a specific way become true matcha. It all begins with the cultivation of a plant known as Camellia sinensis. Take a wild guess in the comments as to how long it takes to grow a tea plant to maturity. If you guessed less than 5 years, you'd be wrong, because it takes half a decade to fully grow a tea plant before it is ready for harvest. These tea leaves are grown in multiple regions of Japan, predominantly being focused in the south, with the most prominent being the Uji region, also synonymously known as the birthplace of matcha. As these tea plants grow, farmers prune them constantly, shaping the bushes so they don't grow too tall. Their branches are carefully spread outward, encouraging the leaves to fan across a wider surface. This makes harvesting smoother and ensures sunlight touches each tender shoot without neglecting any. And while the tea plant is mature enough to harvest by the 5th year, most farmers still wait until the 8th year before offering its leaves for commercial sale. But why would they do that? Well, those in-between years are spent waiting patiently, because the flavors can still be uneven by the 5th year, sometimes too sharp, sometimes too dull. Waiting ensures that the plant has found its balance, and the leaves carry a consistent flavor. However, the meticulous planning and cultivation doesn't simply end here. Approximately 4 to 8 weeks before harvest, the leafy fields are covered to let only 10% of the sunlight pass through. When the tea plant is shaded from sunlight, photosynthesis slows, and the leaves shift their energy inward. This triggers a surge in amino acids, especially L-theanine, the compound that gives matcha its signature sweet and savory umami flavor. This method directly affects the amount of photosynthesis taking place and effectively reduces it. But why would farmers try to limit the most essential process in plant growth? Shading the plants forces them to produce more chlorophyll and also more and more amino acids. These amino acids are to complement the sweet and nutty flavor of matcha. It mainly prevents the production of bitter compounds that will give an undesirable aftertaste. This zealous production of chlorophyll is the main denominator behind the matcha leaf's beautiful jade green. Though that's not all, there's a main character in the matcha world, a compound known as L-theanine. L-theanine mixed with glutamic acid are the reasons for the distinct umami flavor that high-quality matcha possesses. Now, traditionally in the past, the process of shading the leaves required the use of bamboo frames loaded with straw. But while some farmers still swear by it being the best method, in the modern world, most farmers have switched to a more simpler method of shading, the use of a simple black mesh cloth or even plastic covering to protect from the sun's unwelcome rays. The biggest advantage of this is the convenience and reusability. And since this is the most sensitive stage in the process, the farmers are constantly involved, monitoring soil, weather, and shade, scrupulously avoiding instances where small shifts in flavor might occur. The amount of shade given to these leaves directly correlates to their color, with a pale green symbolizing the plants were less shaded and are hence less desirable, in turn making the preferred and expensive version having the deepest shade of green. However, in the month of May, the most important part of the process takes shape: harvesting. Did you know that in order to create the finest tasting tea, harvesters only pick the first of the tea leaves? Yes, the key difference from cooking matcha and ceremonial grade matcha is the way both are handled during the shading process. Ceremonial grade matcha is typically given twice as long of a time to shade, with farmers going to great lengths to ensure their product is of impeccable quality. The first leaves are tender and have excess nutrients in them, which is why they're preferred. And to top it off, they are easy to pluck off while older leaves show resistance. To maintain consistency throughout their batch, some farmers even harvest tea only once per year. This is also a spot where tradition meets more modern methods of agriculture, namely harvesting with the use of machines. The machines eliminate time constraints and can harvest large quantities with record efficiency, especially when the tea fields are as large as the ones in Kagoshima. Though an alternative to the huge machines are versions of lawn trimmer-like items with a bag, which works fantastically in areas having slightly rougher or uneven terrain, like in the Kyoto region, where tea plots are smaller and often carved into the slopes of hillsides. In contrast, handpicking is a slow but rewarding process, and it's reserved in places like Uji for the highest grade of matcha, with buyers willing to pay large amounts just to get those impeccable flavor notes. So now that we have our leaves, just how are they turned into the caffeine-packed green goodness most people crave? The answer lies in 3 crucial steps, beginning with the creation of araka. Araka means crude or unrefined tea in Japanese. Freshly harvested leaves are rushed into the factory's loading bays. The air fills with the scent of cut grass as the leaves are washed and quickly steamed. The heat helps to lock in their color and effectively halts oxidation, preserving the sweet amino acids unique to Japanese green teas. Cooled on broad nets, the leaves rustle slightly as air passes over them, then move into long ovens where a dry, toasted fragrance develops. After the moisture is effectively removed from them, the leaves pass through separating machines that sift out stems and stalks, and what remains behind is called areka, the unfinished form of tea we mentioned earlier. Next comes the conversion of areca into a more refined form known as tencha. This is achieved through a series of refinement steps where several sets of machines work to separate stems and coarse veins, leaving behind only the tender leaf matter. These leaves are then cut into thin, papery flakes, making them easier to store and eventually grind into matcha. What you'll be surprised to hear is that in tencha form, tea can be refrigerated for years, allowing it to preserve and hold its deep and nuanced flavors for years, or at least until needed. But how do manufacturers ascertain whether a certain batch is up to the standards of ceremonial-grade matcha? By bringing in tea masters to profile and sample the batches made. Not all tencha is created the same. Some may be more sharper, while others will take on more mellow flavors. The tea master's job is to create a blend that tantalizes your taste buds. Once a harmonic mix is created, this tencha is stored and, when needed, it's slowly fed into stone mills to achieve the perfect microgranular texture. That, however, is just the tip of the iceberg. The grinding process needs to be slow and methodical. Too fast creates heat, which in turn ruins the delicate flavors we've worked so hard to emulate so far. The most interesting part is that even with the modern introduction of state-of-the-art machinery and grinding mills, it takes around 1 whole hour to create just a measly 40 grams of matcha. But all that effort is worth it, because the final product is a fine, weightless powder with its signature luminous green glow. When rubbed between your fingers, high-quality matcha feels as soft and smooth as talcum powder. But once the leaves are ground, time becomes a critical factor. Matcha begins to lose its vibrancy and flavor quickly. As it ages, the color fades, the aroma dulls, and the taste shifts toward bitterness. Most companies specializing in the ceremonial-grade matcha tend to only grind matcha on demand, essentially storing it in its tencha format until orders come in. This maintains the tea's profile in its most pure form. And that brings us to the end of our journey with matcha, from shaded tea fields, through the patient grind of stone mills, and finally into the bowl. What began as a meditation for monks has become a drink enjoyed across the world, yet every sip still carries centuries of patience, craft, and tradition. While on the surface it seems like fancy tea, it's actually a reflection of Japanese culture and the effort taken to refine every detail over hundreds of years. A powder so fine, it almost vanishes into hot water, then blooms into a rich green foam with just a few strokes of the whisk. Have you ever tried matcha? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching Whole Process.